Story 1. We didn't know I had autism when I was a kid. My best friend in the whole entire world was an autistic girl in the grade below me, and when we became inseparable, my mom proactively explained that autistic people like to repeat things over and over and are uncomfortable making eye contact. I privately thought that autistic people should just do the repeating inside their heads like everyone else does, and was horrified and deeply sympathetic that eye contact was even worse and more unpleasant for them than it already is. I am one oblivious person. Story 2. The fact that I have to consciously tell myself to show expressions during conversations, like, it's time to smile now. People are laughing, I need to laugh too. Or, remember to look at the person talking, etc. For so long, I just thought that was how people worked. The fact that it comes naturally for most people is still kind of hard to understand. Story 3. Apparently, people can have conversations with others in a loud environment. I had my hearing, etc. checked because I just legitimately can't hear a word people say at parties, etc. And yeah, no, just sensory processing disorder. Story 4. Believing exactly what people say when they say something and being shocked when it turns out they didn't mean it the way they said it, and there was something in the way they said it that I was supposed to have picked up on. Story 5. I only just this year learned the term maladaptive daydreaming, and I had no idea it was uncommon to space out so thoroughly in one's head as to be completely oblivious to all external sensory input for an hour or longer. Story 6. I overheard my mom having a conversation when I was 14, and she said I never asked my friends to hang out first. She was right. I had never approached someone to be friends with me, and I never contacted my friends to chat or hang out. It didn't occur to me that I should until then. I made a point of going out of my way to talk to people after that because I didn't want to be seen as a weirdo. But yeah, I still forget that I'm supposed to want to talk to my friends. Story 7. I was baffled by people who broke the rules. For me, everything and anything has a set of rules, and I followed them without question, beating myself up for being a terrible person if I didn't. I got so upset when other people just did what they wanted, like they were cheating. I would even end friendships if I couldn't cope with their disregard of the rules. It took years of therapy to realize that the rules were in my head, quite literally. I was the only one who knew them because I had written them. The kicker: I can change the rules if they don't suit me. I can make exceptions to the rules, I can add caveats, and I can delete them. It was very liberating, but I struggle with it because I need that structure and security in order to function. It's a balancing act. To address the specific question, it took someone else, my therapist, to tell me. Now I understand that not everyone has rules, and specifically, they don't know my rules. I was shocked because I realized how much of my life was spent resenting people who hadn't actually done anything wrong per se, but just didn't know the rules in my head. I mean, how could they? Story 8. I'm neurotypical, but my wife is autistic, and we had a dinner party with her work friends. They work at an elementary school. The other women said that teaching special education is hard because they have to learn to communicate with the kids. She said teaching special education is easy for her, and she finds it harder to communicate with general education kids. Story 9. I thought it was normal to have to learn human behavior and reactions. I had a journal as a kid where I wrote down what certain actions, facial expressions, and body language meant. I showed it to a friend who said, "Duh, everyone knows that. Like you're born knowing." Story 10. Honestly, this is hard to answer because I just always knew something was wrong with me. I assumed from my place of non-existent self-esteem that if in doubt, everything I do is probably wrong, especially if no one else is also doing it. I never thought anything I did was normal and then found it wasn't later. I have a long list of things that I knew were inexplicably weird that I now almost daily understand properly. What I would cite as interesting examples of finding things out from a neurotypical person would be things like only being explicitly told in my 30s that when someone says, "Let's catch up for coffee," I do not, in fact, need to decline or stress out and try to hide the fact that I don't drink coffee because they are using it as a generic phrase. Any or even no beverage, while they have theirs, will do just as well. I also had to be told that it is a good method for having a more delicate or difficult talk with a coworker without starting it in a more intimidating manner that they can then potentially dodge or get defensive from. For example, "Hey, let's go catch up for a coffee sometime soon," is a lot easier to get them somewhere quiet to say something important but hard to say, rather than just marching up to them in an office and saying, Hey, we need to talk about this awkward thing. I wasn't doing that either. I just gave up and figured it was impossible to talk to them about it without being a bad person. Story 11. It's kind of the other way around, but it took me well into my 20s to realize that consent could be applied to things other than sex. I generally don't like being touched, but my entire life people had demanded that I hug them. Friends, family, people at school, neighbors, whatever. When I didn't, they would blame me for it, tell me I was rude, be upset about it, and make me feel guilty because clearly I don't even like them, or make fun of me for hugging them weirdly. One time, my grandma told me she was terribly depressed and wanted to die because I didn't want to hold my baby brother. Clearly, that woman had her own problems. When I was around 25, I made a new friend, and after the first time I went to her place, she tried to hug me goodbye. I was, of course, weird about it. The next time I saw her, she apologized for it so much, and I was so confused by that. Why would you apologize? Nobody else gives a thought that I don't like it. This is just another social convention that I have to put up with. It doesn't matter that I don't like it, we just have to do it, so it's fine. What else are we supposed to do? It only dawned on me then that people saying, well, but I want to hug you, is not more important than me saying, I don't like that. And that maybe, just maybe, the entire time I was not the problem, but the people who forced me to do things I wasn't comfortable with and then made fun of me for doing it wrong were. Story 12. I always thought it was completely normal to rehearse conversations in my head before having them, like full-on scripts for every possible response. When someone finally told me most people do not do that, I was honestly shocked. It blew my mind that people just wing social interactions without a mental rehearsal. I still cannot imagine how that works. Story 13. When I started to figure out I was autistic a few years ago, my husband commented on the fact that I don't try to make people like me. I was like, what do you mean? He explained that most people try to endear themselves to the people around them, such as with coworkers or in-laws. I was like, I'm supposed to be doing that? I didn't think it was any of my business what people thought of me, let alone that I was supposed to be trying to make people like me. Story 14. Providing helpful advice to someone in a conversation when they talk about going somewhere new, doing something new, or dealing with an issue they have. It's really tough to just be quiet because, in my brain, advice equals showing you I care. Story 15. Certain forms of kindness and love are restricted to romantic relationships. I'm not talking about appropriateness and respecting people's boundaries. That's something I understand needs to have nuance and complexity. I mean, I like to take care of people and make them feel safe, seen, and confident in themselves because I think people deserve to be happy. So I give heartfelt compliments, go out of my way to do nice gestures for people, and I listen to their troubles and give sincere empathy. I like telling people I love them and giving them handcrafted gifts. If I'm really close with someone, I might give them kisses on the forehead in a familial way and hold their hand. I put genuine effort into people because I just want to. I've had a lot of friends turn around and ask me out, and I was so confused as to why it kept happening. It was only until someone without autism explained that emotional intimacy of that level was considered strictly romantic for a lot of people that I realized people without autism have a lot of rules around love. For me, friendships and romantic relationships are parallel. They're just different kinds of relationships. Both can be intense. But for others, romantic relationships are a step up from friendships. So if a friendship becomes too intimate, it becomes romantic. It's frustrating because I just like taking care of people and want quality friendships, but not a lot of people function the same way as me. It also means that whenever I do successfully find a friend who views platonic love the same way I do, other people insist I must have feelings for them and can't fathom just liking someone as a person without ulterior motives. Story 16. Needing people to have factually correct information. I was in my late 30s before I understood that it was considered rude by neurotypical people to correct their incorrect beliefs about the world. If something I believe to be true is wrong, then I would like to be corrected with reliable sources, of course. Who wants to walk around with scientifically incorrect information? Story 17. My sensory perception. I honestly thought that everyone else could taste the difference after a company changed the recipe or just how much certain fabrics felt, and just how many feel like sandpaper. Story 18. Last month, My friend group shared a cartoon picture of a room with about 15 different chairs, an interviewer sitting at the front of the room, and a text that read, "You will be having a job interview in this room. Where are you sitting?" Everyone else chose their seats with reasons like, "That seat looks comfy," "That seat looks fun," or "That seat is furthest away from the interviewer." And then there's me. I should not make my seat taller than the interviewer's, as it is disrespectful, so A is eliminated. Sitting on a small stool or a futon or mat when the interviewer is sitting on a chair doesn't seem professional either, so B and C are eliminated. In a work setting, I should not choose seats that are non-professional, so no swing seats or sofas. When the interviewer is sitting in a regular chair, sitting in a grand chair resembling a throne is not respectful, so that one goes out too. Now, the seats left are D, E, F, and G, but in an interview, I shouldn't be sitting too far away from the interviewer or I will look not eager enough to get the job, so G is eliminated. Between D, E, and F, only 2 chairs have a back, and I will need to occasionally lean back and relax to release tension and show confidence because sitting upright in a backless stool makes me look too tense, so E is eliminated. Between D and F, D is padded and F is not, so if I go for comfort, I have to choose D, but the interviewer isn't sitting in a padded chair either, so I will choose F to show I am not a squeamish or delicate person. Silence in the group chat. Then someone said, "You don't have to actually think so rationally about this." Story 19. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and I always thought it was normal for my mind to have a constant dialogue with itself. Like, all day, every moment I'm awake. It's like there are 2 people having a conversation in my head. I used to think everyone was like that. Now I know it's just an us thing. Like, I swear to you, I'm not crazy. Story 20. I go to the grocery store every night at the same time, and I know where everything is. I write my list in the order of what I'll pass, and my goal is to avoid the need to backtrack. I just thought I was being efficient. Story 21. Absolutely losing appetite when an unpleasant ingredient is in my food. It baffles me when my brother says he does not like a food yet eats it anyway. Like, bro, if I do not like a food, it is a hard no. I am not eating that. Also, I absolutely hate when food pretends to be something it is not. If I eat an honest vegetable burger, okay, but a vegetable burger pretending to be beef is repulsive. Story 22. I work with someone who is on the autism spectrum. We work with the general public. He randomly said, "How do you remember all these people's faces?" I easily remember the faces and behaviors of repeat customers, the same with my neurological coworkers. I just kind of stood there, and it really hit me that people with autism often have difficulty with things like that. It would have never occurred to me that it was unusual for him to remember and recognize so many faces and behaviors. Story 23. I didn't know that it's weird to leave your eyes open when they wash your hair at a salon until a year or 2 ago. I had never considered how unsettling it would be to see someone staring blankly at the ceiling with their head in a sink, especially from the hairstylist's perspective. Story 24. I really struggle with greetings and goodbyes. Telling someone good morning before you just ask them or tell them what you need. Ending a phone call with goodbye, instead of just hanging up when the information is exchanged. It's difficult, and I didn't realize it comes off as rude until my 20s when a manager at work got upset that I never greeted them. I've practiced so much and still mess it up. Story 25. A manager actually pulled me aside once because I wouldn't look him in the eye, but thankfully he understood when I explained how uncomfortable eye contact has always made me. It's like a pit opens in my stomach every time I try. The number of people who have told me it's rude to have a conversation without eye contact is unbelievable. I honestly don't understand how they can do it. Story 26. I'm not diagnosed but highly suspect I have autism. And when somebody asked me, "How are you?" I would say, "I'm fine," without asking back, "What about you?" The thought to ask it back simply doesn't occur. It doesn't mean that I didn't care for their feelings. I suppose for most neurotypical people it comes naturally, but for me, I need to actively remind myself and take a deliberate mental action to reciprocate the question. Story 27. I'm not diagnosed but in the process of seeking assessment, so take with a grain of salt. But I think a big thing was how many things I'd push through or adapt to, and I assume everyone else started doing that when they grew up. I've now been asking people in my life specific things, and they're like, no. Like for routines being disturbed, I listed some examples as that's normal, everybody adapts to that, right? Then I found out it doesn't matter to most people whether they brush their hair or teeth first. And having your roommate hog the bathroom and force you to do stuff out of order doesn't upset people as long as they're ready in time. So yeah, I don't know if it's autism specifically, but a lot of small things I figured people adapted to and hid their discomfort for. They're just not uncomfortable in the first place.